This sentence has always been controversial. And so came one of the most famous scenes in Chinese history. If my son can be assisted, assist him. If he proves unworthy, you may take the throne yourself.
Understanding the Mysterious East, interpreting the timeless classics. Welcome to Mysterious East.
Chapter 4, The Collapse After the Summit. In the previous chapter, Liu Bei finally reached the peak of his life. From a ruined man who once sold straw sandals and woven mats, he had become a ruler who held one part of the divided realm. After 30 long years, the Shu Han group seemed stronger than ever. In civil affairs, it had Zhuge Liang and Fa Zheng. In military power, it had the 5 tiger generals. Its territory stretched across Jingzhou and Yizhou. It seemed that the dream of restoring the Han Dynasty was now only one step away. But the summit often marks the beginning of crisis. Just when Liu Bei was at his most confident, trouble broke out in Jingzhou. Guan Yu, the man later worshipped as the saint of war, revealed the fatal weakness in his character at this stage. Arrogance. Guan Yu launched the campaign against Fancheng. He flooded the enemy forces, captured Eugene, executed Pang De, and shook the entire realm with his power. His victories frightened Cao Cao so deeply that Cao Cao even considered moving the capital. This was the brightest moment of Guan Yu's military career. But it was also the beginning of his tragedy. In Guan Yu's eyes, there was only Cao Cao in the north. He completely ignored Sun Quan, the ally behind him. His attitude toward Eastern Wu was extremely contemptuous. When Sun Quan asked to arrange a marriage between his son and Guan Yu's daughter, Guan Yu responded with a sentence that destroyed the entire diplomatic relationship. How can the daughter of a tiger be married to the son of a dog? This was not merely low emotional intelligence. It was severe strategic short-sightedness. In the struggle of the 3 kingdoms, Shu Han was the weakest side. It had to cooperate with Eastern Wu in order to resist Cao Cao. Guan Yu's arrogance gave way and Wu a reason to join hands against him. Lu Meng crossed the river in white clothes and launched a surprise attack on Jingzhou. This special operation directly cut off Guan Yu's path of retreat. The families of the frontline soldiers were now under Eastern Wu's control. The morale of Guan Yu's army collapsed in an instant. The once invincible Lord Guan was finally defeated and forced to retreat to Maicheng. In the end, he was captured and executed. Guan Yu's death was one of the greatest turning points in romance of the 3 kingdoms. It was not only the fall of a hero. It was also the turning point of Shu Han's national destiny. The strategic vision of the Longzhong plan, sending armies from 2 directions, was completely shattered. Shu Han lost half of its territory and many of its most elite troops. Even more terrifying, Guan Yu's death triggered a chain reaction that dragged the entire group into an emotional abyss. This brings us to Zhang Fei. After hearing the news of his second brother's death, Zhang Fei was devastated. But the way he released his grief was to whip his soldiers and give them impossible tasks. In the end, he was assassinated by his own subordinates, Fan Jiang and Zhang De. 2 mighty warriors who were said to be worth 10,000 men did not die on the battlefield in a heroic charge. One died because of arrogance. The other died because of violent temper. This is not only a story about how character determines fate. It is also a warning to every leader. What destroys our achievements is often not the strength of the enemy. It is the blind spot inside our own character. After losing 2 brothers in succession, Liu Bei completely collapsed. At this moment, he was no longer the rational political leader he once had been. He had become an old man consumed by the flames of revenge. Ignoring the bitter advice of Zhuge Liang and Zhao Yun, he mobilized the strength of the entire state and launched a campaign against Eastern Wu. This was the Battle of Yiling. In this war, Liu Bei violated almost every major principle of military strategy. He gave up the advantage of advancing by both water and land. He abandoned the ships and moved by land. Then he stretched his camps through the mountains and forests for 700 li. This gave the young Eastern Wu commander Lu Xun the perfect opportunity. Lu Xun was also a ruthless man. He endured humiliation, remained patient, and refused to fight. He waited until the height of summer, when the Shu army was exhausted and poorly supplied. Then, with one fire, he struck. The flames burned through the connected camps for 700 li. That night, the elite forces of Shu Han were almost completely destroyed. The strength Liu Bei had accumulated over decades turned to ashes. This fire was even more painful than the fire at Red Cliffs. Because this time, the disaster was self-inflicted. It gives us a bloody lesson. Never make major decisions when you are overwhelmed by emotion. As a leader, once you are dragged forward by emotion, you lose the ability to judge the situation objectively. In the end, you may lead the entire team into an abyss. Liu Bei fled to Beitasheng and fell gravely ill. At this moment, he finally cooled down from his madness and returned to the deeper instincts of a far-sighted political leader. He knew that his time was running out. He had to arrange a path forward for this storm-tossed regime. And so came one of the most famous scenes in Chinese history. Liu Bei entrusting his orphan at Beitasheng. Liu Bei said to Zhuge Liang, "Your talent is 10 times greater than Qiao Pai's. You will surely be able to bring peace to the state and settle great affairs. If my son can be assisted, assist him. If he proves unworthy, you may take the throne yourself." This sentence has always been controversial. Some say it was a test. Some say it was sincere. But I am more willing to believe that this was Liu Bei's final gamble as a political leader. With this extreme trust, and perhaps even a kind of moral binding, Liu Bei completely locked in Zhuge Liang's loyalty. At the same time, he gave Zhuge Liang supreme authority and political legitimacy. Liu Bei knew that only Zhuge Liang could hold together this broken situation. The wind at Beitasheng scattered Liu Bei's final regrets. It also placed a burden heavier than 1,000 pieces of gold onto Zhuge Liang's shoulders. At this point, Shu Han had almost nothing left except one slogan. The Han and the traitors cannot coexist. A king must not settle for mere survival in one corner. But slogans are only slogans. In reality, Ezhou was exhausted. The talent pipeline had begun to break. People's hearts were changing. What Zhuge Liang inherited was a classic crisis management situation. But he displayed the textbook bearing of a true prime minister. Externally, he sent Deng Zhi as an envoy to Eastern Wu. Even though there was hatred between the two sides over Jingzhou and Guan Yu's death, he still had to swallow the pain and repair the Sun-Lu alliance. Because he understood one thing clearly. Without diplomatic security, there could be no military possibility. Internally, he launched the southern campaign against Nanzhong. He captured Meng Huo 7 times and released him 7 times. This story is extremely legendary. Some people think Zhuge Liang was simply trying to expand territory or seize resources. But in truth, this was a war of the heart. A wild and remote place like Nanzhong was easy to conquer, but difficult to govern. Only by truly winning over the people's hearts could Shu Han make its rear area as stable as Mount Tai. Only then could it gain a steady supply of soldiers, resources, and materials. After securing the rear, Zhuge Liang finally turned his eyes to the north. That was the shared dream of him and Liu Bei. It was also the unfinished mission of the Longzhong plan. And so, the famous memorial on sending out the troops was born. The line, "Tears fall upon this memorial, and I do not know what I have written," was not empty sentimentality. It was the last words of an idealist before departure. Zhuge Liang knew that this campaign would be full of danger. But he still had to go. Because Shu Han was too weak. If it did not take the initiative and use offense as defense, it would only be slowly consumed to death by the stronger Qiao Wei. The 6 expeditions to Qishan became the most tragic movement in the second half of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. At this stage, Zhuge Liang met the great rival of his life. Sima Yi. These two men were like the two sides of a coin. Zhuge Liang represented extreme idealism. He devoted himself completely until the end of his life. Sima Yi represented extreme realism. He endured humiliation, hid his sharpness, and used patience as his weapon. The most fascinating battle between them was the empty fort strategy. Although its historical authenticity is debated, it is indispensable within the logic of the novel. At that moment, Ma Su had lost Jieting, causing the entire northern expedition to collapse. Sima Yi's army pressed toward Xicheng. Zhuge Liang had only a group of civil officials and 2,000 old, weak soldiers beside him. He could not run. He could not fight. So Zhuge Liang simply opened the city gates wide. Then he sat on the tower, burned incense, and played the zither. That melody was not merely music. It was psychological warfare. Did Sima Yi understand it? Of course he did. Many people say Sima Yi was deceived. But in a game at this level, how could a man like Sima Yi be so easily fooled? Sima Yi retreated not only because he suspected an ambush. More importantly, he deeply understood the principle. When the birds are gone, the bough is put away. When the clever rabbit is dead, the hunting dog is cooked. If Zhuge Liang died, what value would Sima Yi still have to Cao Wei? Perhaps his own death would not be far away. This was a duel between true masters. On the surface, they were fighting a war. In reality, they were exchanging political bargaining chips. However, human strategy cannot ultimately defeat fate. At Wuzhang Plains, the autumn wind grew cold. In order to prolong Shu Han's national destiny, Zhuge Liang tried to defy heaven and extend his life by lighting the 7-star lamps. But Wei Yan stepped in and knocked over the main lamp. That one step overturned the final hope. This was not merely superstition. It was also a symbol. It symbolized that internal conflict, especially the discord between Wei Yan and Yang Yi, would eventually destroy the efforts made against external enemies. Before his death, Zhuge Liang arranged everything. How the army should retreat. How Wei Yan should be dealt with. How Sima Yi could be made afraid to pursue. This is the meaning of the saying. Even a dead Zhuge Liang could frighten away the living Zhongda. Until the final moment of his life, Zhuge Liang was still calculating. He was still protecting Shu Han. This spirit of knowing something cannot be done, yet still doing it, rises beyond success and failure. It made him the embodiment of wisdom and loyalty in Chinese civilization. His death marked the true end of the heroic age of the Three Kingdoms. From then on, there were no more great heroes like Liu Bei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Zhuge Liang. What remained was only conspiracy and calculation. After Zhuge Liang was gone, Jiang Wei took up the banner of the northern expeditions. Jiang Wei was lonely. Because he did not even have Zhuge Liang's prestige, yet he had to carry the same burden. He launched 9 expeditions against the Central Plains, fighting even more aggressively than Zhuge Liang. But by then, Shu Han's national strength had already been pushed to its absolute limit. At court, eunuchs and palace factions manipulated power. Empresses and officials fought for influence. The later lord, Liu Shan, sank into comfort and pleasure, almost forgetting the land his father had spent his life trying to restore. This was a desperate cycle of collapse. At the front, soldiers were bleeding. At the rear, the powerful were digging holes beneath the foundation. Finally, Deng Ai crossed Yinping by a hidden route. This was a gambler's military adventure. But he won the gamble. Facing the Wei army that seemed to fall from the sky, Liu Shan chose surrender. And just like that, the Shu Han state that Liu Bei had struggled for his entire life to build came to an end. Jiang Wei was unwilling to accept this ending. He wanted to make one final attempt. He pretended to surrender to Zhong Hui, hoping to persuade the Wei general to rebel and restore Shu. But the plan was exposed. Jiang Wei died in the chaos. Legend says that when his body was cut open, his gallbladder was as large as a fighting measure. This was the last blood and courage of the three kingdoms. It was also the final spark of idealism before everything was swallowed by reality. The story that followed was less glorious, yet even more ironic. The Sima family outlived everyone. Sima Yi outlived Cao Cao's heirs. He outlived Zhuge Liang. His family waited, endured, and slowly took control of Cao Wei from within. By the time of Sima Zhao, everyone already knew his ambition. As the saying goes, Sima Zhao's heart is known to every passerby. And when power reached his son Sima Yan, the final mask was removed. Sima Yan forced the ruler of Wei to abdicate and established the Jin dynasty. Eastern Wu, under Sun Hao, had also fallen into cruelty and decay. When Wang Jun's tower ships sailed down the river from Izhou, the old defense of the south could no longer hold. In the year 280, Wu fell. The three kingdoms returned to one empire. The world, long divided, was united once again. But was this truly a perfect ending? No. The unification of the Jin dynasty did not bring back the strength and order of the Han. Instead, because its moral foundation was weak and its legitimacy was born from usurpation, the new dynasty soon fell into instability. Not long after, the War of the Eight Princes erupted. Then came the even darker chaos of the Five Barbarians. The age of division did not truly end. It merely changed its name. When we look back at the vast story of romance of the three kingdoms, what do we really see? We see the ideal of the oath of the peach garden. We see the burning brilliance of red cliffs. We see the cold autumn wind over Wuzhang plains. We see one living soul after another struggling, fighting, burning, and fading within the flood of history. Cao Cao's ruthless heroism. Liu Bei's benevolent ambition. Guan Yu's pride. Zhuge Liang's loyalty. Sima Yi's endurance. Together, they wrote an encyclopedia of human nature. This book records more than a period of history from the late 2nd century to the 3rd century. It records the eternal survival wisdom and spiritual imagination of the Chinese people. Power rises and falls. Alliances form and break. Heroes gather and disappear. But human desire, loyalty, ambition, fear, pride, and regret never truly change. That is why Romance of the Three Kingdoms is not only a story of ancient war. It is a mirror. It shows us how people make choices when order collapses. It shows us how ideals are tested by reality. It shows us how even the greatest heroes cannot fully escape the limits of fate. In the end, perhaps no one truly won. Liu Bei did not restore the Han. Cao Cao did not become emperor in his own lifetime. Sun Quan guarded the south, but could not rule the world. Zhuge Liang exhausted his life, yet could not reverse heaven's will. Sima Yi endured to the end, but the dynasty his family built soon fell into even greater chaos. This is the deepest tragedy of the three kingdoms. Everyone struggled for the world. But the world never truly belonged to anyone. And yet, this does not make their struggle meaningless. Because history does not remember only the final winner. It also remembers those who burned themselves in pursuit of loyalty, ambition, justice, power, and impossible dreams. Even if the ending is destined to fade into emptiness, the process of struggle still shines. The moments when people refuse to surrender to fate are the most precious legacy history leaves behind. As Luo Guanzhong wrote in the opening poem, "How many affairs, ancient and modern, all become material for laughter and conversation. But behind that laughter, there is also sorrow. Behind the conversation, there is also blood. And behind the rise and fall of kingdoms, there is always the same question. When the world falls into chaos, what kind of person will you choose to become?" This is the final echo of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Not victory. Not defeat. But the human heart, exposed under the storm of history.